I want to say good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm saying that because I see quite a few members from the IPHE here, and we have 23 countries in the European Commission, which means technically at any point in time in the world there's an IPHE member country. So just to respect the different time zones that we're in. So I'm Rebecca Maserumule. I'm the chairperson of IPHE, International Partnership for Fuel Cells and Hydrogen of the Economy. So I'm here to do two things. Talk about the global international partnerships for supporting a global workforce, but also the launching of our hydrogen diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility initiative. We call it HY2DEA in short. So essentially, worldwide, you've seen a lot of activity around hydrogen. Since the last hydrogen review, which was released in 2022, 4 governments and up to, I think, 15 countries, mostly from emerging economies, have launched hydrogen strategies. To date, a total of 41 governments, accounting for nearly 80% of our global greenhouse gas emissions, actually have hydrogen strategies. And if you look at each and every one of these strategies, they have very consistent themes around decarbonization of transport, decarbonization of industry, exporting hydrogen, but one of the main cross-cutters has always been around skills and skills development. And what does that workforce look like? Because we know that we need more people, as we grow the sector, we're gonna need a skilled workforce to meet the needs and demands of the new sector. And I think what's also important, or it's essential to see, is that strategies have come across different countries. So I see Franklin from Costa Rica's here. They launched one last year. US has been creating lots of waves with the ERA and the hydrogen strategy released. Germany, South Africa, of course, from South Africa. So of course I had to mention South Africa. And even Singapore, one of our newest members of the IPHE. And in terms of skills assessment, many countries like Australia, Canada, EU, and France have actually completed early stage strategies or assessments. South Africa, UK are actually coming in to looking at what the needs are. Really looking at the needs and competencies along the whole entire value chain. You're seeing work in the UK where they're actually projecting hundreds of thousands of jobs required in the hydrogen space. And even in terms of the discussions around what the needs are, even how we're going to produce the future workforce around the training, the reskilling, and so forth. Unfortunately, what we've seen is that the conversations have been mostly silent about issues of diversity. So we know traditionally most of the skills or most of the workforce is going to start in your oil and gas sector, which we know to be predominantly male, white male, and so forth. But we're looking at skills need across the whole entire industry in the global north and the global south. So essentially we know there's statistics, and I'm not going to go into detail, that say if you don't have a diverse workforce, you're going to have challenges. Yet, even as we talk to full numbers, we're not talking about the issue of inclusivity and diversity. So the question is, this is actually not going to hit us now, maybe in the next couple of years. Maybe 10 years out, we're going to have basically not enough people in the workforce if we don't look at taking a whole of workforce approach to finding the future. And before I go any further, of course, it's important to understand that IPHE and what we are. So I mentioned our, I guess, full name acronym, but really we're a partnership that established in 2003. So just over 20 years ago, we were established in Washington, DC. And really is around bringing governments together to advance our worldwide progress on hydrogen and fuel cells. And as of today, we have 23 countries and the European Commission who are members. And the last 2 countries, Singapore and Belgium, were just added 6 months ago when we were in South Africa for the 39th meeting. And I think it's important to know how powerful the organization is. So I would say we have a third of a million stationary fuel cells actually deployed, 1 gigawatt of fuel cell power, 30,000 fuel cell electric vehicles, and just over 470 fuel cell stations in the world. So we're a pretty powerful force for change in the hydrogen space. But I think what's important is you saw all the flags that we have here. And like I said, we're at any point in time in the world, there is an IPHE member country in the world. But I think I want to focus on the chair, so I'm the current chair, And then I have 3 vice chairs, Dr. Noe van Hulst, who's sitting here from the Netherlands. We have Mr. Tomohiko Adachi from Japan, sorry I have his name wrong. And then last but not least, Dr. Sunita Satchapal from the United States of America. So I think it's important to note that I'm the first chair from an African country, and I'm the second time in the last 20 years we've had a female chair. So I'm not saying this because I want to clap, but I want you to really start to reflect, why is that? In 20 years, only twice have we had a woman, and only once have we had someone from an African continent, and so forth. And this actually, just this one slide tells you that diversity, equity, inclusivity, accessibility is important. So even when I'm saying, whenever I see a speaker, the first question is, how did they get here? So I'm not saying, I came from South Africa through Morocco to Washington, D.C. on my time here. And it wasn't, I'm not saying that I took a hydrogen-fueled plane, because they don't exist quite yet. I didn't use sustainable aviation fuels. So again, despite the efforts, SAFs haven't penetrated the way they need to, and neither did I take a hydrogen fuel cell taxi. Unfortunately, US isn't as progressive as France when it comes to hydrogen fuel cell taxi fleet. I'm here because I had a mentor at different stages in my life to become who I am today. And as I say, how did I get here? The question was, who was part of my journey? What mentors supported me towards my success? And who did I reach back to actually ensure that as I move forward, I'd move forward with others? Actually, this morning, as I was looking at my journaling, one of my mentees from South Africa, Priscilla Brandt, I'm going to speak her name, she sent me a really nice message this morning saying, I know you can do a good job. She's been my mentor for the last year. And it's really, spoke to my heart in the sense that, why do we need a Hi2DIA program? So Hi2DIA, which is Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, Accessibility, is a global platform to advance diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility in the hydrogen sector. So it's a platform. So it's not something physical, but it's a platform that allows us to work together to ensure that we can, through proper networking, mentoring, outreach, and data collection activities around this area of focus. Who is involved? So you've heard about the IPHE, we're the premier organization globally for government in hydrogen space, but who we're partnering with is a Hydrogen Council, with a founding member. So Hydrogen Council, for those who do not know who they are, is a global CEO-led initiative that brings together leading companies with a united vision. It was launched in 2017 at the World Economic Forum in Davos. And initially, it started out with 13 CEOs. Now, over the last 5 years, I believe it's grown to 150 CEOs and multinational companies representing the entire value chain for hydrogen. So we're partnering with the largest employers of hydrogen fuel cell sector, but also looking at other members from other organizations. So the Clean Energy Ministerial, Breakthrough Agenda, as well as Mission Innovation, we're looking to posse partner. How are we going to improve diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility in the hydrogen space? So we're looking at, first, a Hydrogen Mentors program that we'll be launching over the next few weeks to look at how do we provide career advice to professionals, especially in the early stage. I know under the IPHE, we have an early career network, which has over 350 participants from across 40 countries that we're looking at as the first cohort, but also adding cohorts from other initiatives like the Women in Green Hydrogen Initiative and so forth. Also in terms of networking events that we're looking to sponsor to improve interaction and foster interaction with individuals who sit from those backgrounds. Third, we're going to be collecting data. So the first part of the partnership with Hydrogen Council, because they're the biggest employers, they'll be helping us with the collection of routine data around these issues. So like I said, you can't monitor what you can't monitor what you don't measure. And really the monitoring of these aspects is going to be really important to ensure that we can improve this in the sector. And last but not least, promoting linkages with other similar global initiatives. So again, under the SEM initiative, or the Clean Energy Ministerial, you have the C3E program that's existing, as well as other bilateral programs that we have globally. And then last but not least, this is my last slide. Really, the question is, this platform will essentially ensure that we have easily accessible tools. So there's lots of tools out there. However, we're going to have one place where you can go, one-stop shop for seeing information. And then also, I think what's also important is we're looking at building upon existing lessons learned across existing sectors like oil and extractive sector, and industries like clean energy sector, to ensure that we can have multiple levels of employment in the sector. So what's important to note is that we can bring women, persons of disability, persons of color into the sector. The challenge is, do they stay in the sector and get promoted into the sector? And that's an issue we're trying to sort out. And then in terms of bringing together national and regional initiatives around the world to help international experts navigate and adopt these issues around diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility to best practice. And I think for me, like we said, we have quite a few initiatives that start out, but they actually lose steam after a few years. So the question is, how do we ensure that these initiatives that were out there can work together to not lose steam? And then also the mentorship program, which we'll be launching in a few weeks to raise awareness around the pathway. So this mentorship program we'll be launching will be actually an online mentoring platform. So I think it's important to note that we're going to have multiple languages, multiple time zones, multiple industries where you can link in. So we'll be looking for mentors and mentees over the next few weeks. So please, keep us in mind when you see the email asking you to be a mentor or a mentee. You can be both. And then I think in terms of what's also important is shining the spotlight on leaders and experts from diverse fields, providing role models, lessons learned for future leaders. I know I say even my journey here as a Black female with a PhD in mathematics, it was probably in part possible because my advisor at the time, Professor Isom Heron, was a Black mathematician as well. So seeing someone who looks like you actually does have a positive impact. And the last but not least, collection of data around qualitative and quantitative data to ensure that we have an evidence-based approach for setting goals in the hydrogen sector. And I think this is really important. We need to have targets, but those targets need to be set based on certain baselines. So we're looking to the private sector to really work with us as we work towards our goals for expanding diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility in the sector. So on that note, I'd like to open up the floor for questions, Q&A. Thank you. Any questions? Okay, just gentleman over here.
Yeah, it sounded like at the end there, the number one thing that you said would be most important is there somebody in each stage of the career progression ladder that looks like me, no, not me, right, the opposite of me, but that looks like me to the people that we're trying to attract and keep in this industry. I just wanted to make sure that I caught that correctly, is we're looking at succession, ascension, and retention throughout the career. Longevity is like the number one goal and leverage point?
Well, I wouldn't say that. I mean, that was just a very personal experience for me where my advisor was a Black male, but in my sector, there's not many Blacks or even women, so I've really found that I have had great mentors who have been white males, white females, Indian males, and so forth throughout my career. So that was just a personal experience, but I mentor persons who are not of color, just those who are sometimes I've mentored people who are older than me, but I just have more knowledge and influence, and they just need my experience. I'm almost 50, by the way, but I've mentored people who are like 55 and 60. So I think everyone needs to be part of the journey and so forth, especially when you have such a small number. So I didn't want to mean that you want to feel like you can't be a mentor. Would love to see you and so forth, and so forth. And also, I think your question was a brilliant question to ensure that there was clarity. No more questions? Okay.
I have a question, and I apologize, I missed the first part, so you may have already said this, but would you say the objective or the goal of the platform or tool is more to enhance diversity, equity, and inclusion within the hydrogen space, like within the workforce here, or in the projects that are being built and sort of encouraging equitable outcomes more broadly, or both?
Yeah, I think that is maybe another facet of equity, like projects deployed in certain areas in the country, like more of a regional thing. We're just looking at the situation where can we get more brown and black people, people or persons of disability, LGBTQ+, as well as, into the sector. Because essentially, if you get them into the sector to become decision makers, that actually brings influence. So whether or not a project is located in Corpus Christi versus an area in Pennsylvania is another story, or even another country is another dimension.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, and if you have any questions, you can contact me with my information. Thank you so much.